Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Today's program is on the topic of don't let stress make you the next beauty salon dropout. There's a well-kept secret among hairstylists that most aren't willing to discuss. That secret? Being a hairstylist can be a very stressful profession, often leading to burnout. In today's program, you'll discover why many stylists leave the industry burned out and underpaid, even though they may be booked in the salon, why a lot of stylists are exhausted and don't even have a dream for their lives, what they don't teach stylists in beauty school, ways for stylists to manage stress, recognize the signs of burnout, start to dream again, and reconnect with their purpose, joyfully discover the professional that they were meant to be, and make the money they deserve. Today we're talking to Rebecca Beardsley. Rebecca helps hairdressers worldwide reconnect with their artistic talents, burst through the barriers blocking their brilliance, and re-energize their careers and lives. Whether they are salon owners developing successful teams and wanting greater return on their investments, or salon employees wanting to up-level themselves and their careers. Whether you're just out of beauty school or an industry veteran, Rebecca's mission is to raise the bar for the hairdressing industry and elevate the lives of stylists all over the world. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Hi there. Thank you, Donna.
Well, I am so excited to have you here today because this gives me some insight into a lot of stuff that I didn't know about hairstylists. So let's go ahead and jump in with the big secret that we've talked about a little bit there in the introduction. That big secret being the whole notion that hairdressing is stressful. Tell us a little bit about that. What's going on with that?
Well, sure. I mean, it's something we don't hear about, and it's not something that hairdressers really talk about. I think because we are in the profession of making people look good, so we're on the spot and we need to look good, and we got to have it all together. But I think it's a very challenging profession to get started in. Years ago, when I first started in the industry, I had lots of fear and trepidation, and I wasn't making any money. And I left for a year. I went to do produce for a year because I was thinking this is not for me. If I spent this time in school and all this, and then I realized how much pressure there actually is. There's a tremendous amount of stress that we don't talk about from the pressure of looking good, from the standpoint of taking on client stuff. Sometimes that's not really talked about, like what we take on as hairdressers standing behind the chair and what our clients are feeling and what they're going through in their lives. It's known to be a place where people talk and I have a theory about that. When we touch their heads and they're looking in the mirror, I feel like something happens there. And people either open to it or they don't, but the client can release some stuff. And whether they talk about it or not, we're picking up their stress. There's like this, when in the beginning it's hard to decipher what's going on really, but it's very easy to take on the stress. And, from being on time to being a salesperson to being great at what we do, how am I navigating this haircut, to being creative on the spot. So I think there's many aspects to why it is a stressful job, and depending on where you work, it can be even more stressful. But in the beginning, when I picked that up, I said, this is not for me. And it actually took a friend dragging me out of that produce stand to say, no, you're a hairdresser, for God's sake. What are you doing in this produce market? So, and then it was the beginning of really starting to own what I did as a professional. But I bet if you talk to any hairdresser out there, they're always seeking something else. Like there must be something more grand for me to do. But truthfully, hairdressers are my heroes. And this is why I wanted to share this information. I feel like there are a lot of unsung heroes out there standing behind the chair who aren't celebrity hairdressers, who don't get mentioned, who maybe get a thank you from their client, but they're helping people look and feel beautiful. And to me, that we need more beauty in the world. And I'd like to help hairdressers own what they do and become more of who they are behind the chair and manage the stress. So I just want to unpack that and talk about that stuff we don't talk about, and certainly they don't talk about it in beauty school. So that's where I'm coming from about this.
Well, you've mentioned a couple of things that cause hairstylist stress. Are there like maybe a top 3, top 4 big stressors for hairstylists?
Well, I think some of them are competition amongst each other to be better at what we do. And that stems to a different one, which is perfectionism. I'd probably say a large percentage of us are perfectionists. And so we're harder on ourselves mostly than what maybe our clients are. But the need to be on top, because clients are very well educated now. They have online to educate themselves about services and products. So stylists need to be very up to date on everything, from their look to what they're doing to technique. And that's a lot of the training out there is actually technique oriented. And I kind of want to talk about what's underneath, because I think that's as important. And I think another stressor is you know, the pressures of your outside life coming into the salon. It has to be put aside, you know, to be available to your client and to be able to serve them in the way that they need to be served and deserve to be served. We need to kind of put our own stuff aside. So I think that being emotionally available can be kind of stressful in and of itself. And so the taking on clients' baggage, I think, is a whole nother one. Not having boundaries is a huge issue, I think, in the industry that we don't hear much about.
Well, I want you to touch a little bit more on this, you know, taking on client baggage. I often think of, well, I guess I see this maybe portrayed in the movies. I don't know that I necessarily do that with my own hairdresser, but hairdressers seem to be, they seem to be almost like therapists. I mean, you know, you watch the movies, there's one with Queen Latifah called Beauty Shop, and like, you know, she knows so much of what's going on in her clients' lives. And then there's a character in Steel Magnolias. I mean, a lot of the movie takes place in, I think it's Olympia Dukakis's, Weezer maybe is her name, her character's name, her beauty shop.
Yes, yes.
How does all of that happen in terms of taking on the client baggage? You know, it's portrayed that way in the movies, and obviously there's some of that based on reality in real life. How does that happen,
right.
and how do stylists deal with that?
Well, you know, I think, you know, you're touching on something, because I think beauty salons, if you will, the name beauty salons, they used to be really places where community would come in. You would know everything that's happening. And a lot of hairdressers, if you interview them, they know a wide range of things because of the people that come and sit in their chair. I mean, I'm the first to say my clients have educated me. They've taught me about the world. And, you know, for a little girl out of Redding, California, this was like beyond. It was a way of finding, it was my college education. And so they used to be places of community, and I think that it is still in some. So you hear about things, although it's not quite, I mean, I suppose there are hairdressers that really delve in and try to find out everything about their clients. In fact, you know, I have a short story about this friend of mine who, a very dear friend, who I worked side by side with for many years. And he was the most empathic person I knew. And I bet if you talk to most hairdressers, you get a sense that they're pretty empathic. But he so took it on that, you know, 20 years later, he had a breakdown and had to leave the industry. And that's what I'm talking about. It's this, you know, not having, it's like we're expected to kind of be the therapist. And I'd venture to say, to be a master hairstylist, you don't go there. You don't, there's a way to take care of your clients without going in there and being their therapist. It's being their cheerleader for sure. You look fabulous. That blouse looks beautiful on you, your eye color. And it's not manipulation. It truly is finding the gifts that they bring in and bringing those out. So, you know, we don't have to be their therapist, but we can be their cheerleader. And how to do that without getting sucked into the drama. And you know, and on the other side is the hairdresser not bringing their drama. So that's a whole other conversation. But does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like that, you know, a beauty salon training or, you know, hairstylist school needs to have a little session on not being the therapist and setting some boundaries. But
exactly.
For those who haven't quite yet learned that lesson, let's talk a little bit about how a stylist would recognize when they're experiencing burnout or stress. Sometimes it's just, I know, feeling bad and feeling overwhelmed, but are there other signs that they should be mindful of?
Sure. I mean, I think it's subtle. I think it can be very subtle. And believe me, this is not like you reach some road, holy ground, and then you're finished and that you are never working on these issues again. They will come up in our lives throughout your career. So it's not a one-stop shop. It is something we continually need to work on, and I still do. But the ways we can recognize it are, you know, if you're feeling kind of sad or depressed when your client leaves, I mean, it's like really starting to notice how you feel with the client. I mean, are you giving so much that you have nothing left at the end of the day? Because truly, at the end of the day, we should feel as delighted as when we walked in the door, if we walked in the door delighted. And that's another conversation of kind of clearing ourselves in the morning. And I share that actually on my, you know, strategy tips on my website, hairdresserselfcare.com, because it is something we continually need to work on. And there's ways we can deal with that. But I think another way of noticing it is if we feel defensive, if we feel anxious, apathetic maybe we're feeling like we just don't care, we're just doing our job. And really what I'm talking about is like elevating ourselves so that we're being masterful at what we do. It's about changing our jobs, just our jobs, into a vocation, something that we're really fostering this sort of career and something we really care about. And therefore, I'm telling you, you'll be booked a line out the door because what clients get when you care. I think if you're feeling exhausted or lonely or isolated, like, gosh, you're feeling like just fed up and you feel there's no vision, no dream. That's when those are definitely signs of burnout and stress. And actually, you know, I didn't really get that there was something greater for me in this industry till 15 years in. And they say it takes 10 years to 15 years to feel masterful at what you do. But that's about the time I went away to India, and it took that 6 weeks there that all of a sudden I started remembering a story about my sister putting makeup on me for the first time. And at the end of this session, when she put her hands on my shoulder and said, "Don't you look beautiful?" it kind of just sent a shock wave through me about, is that why I'm in this industry? Is that moment was so powerful that I wanted to recreate that for clients. And that's when I got, there's something very profound here that I don't need to run from anymore. I am proud to be a hairdresser. And I truly want every hairdresser to feel that and own that. So in recognizing those steps early on and dealing with them is going to just empower you to make changes in your life, to have this career support you in the way you need to do it.
Well, I don't know that every hairdresser can necessarily take off to go to India to de-stress, but I'm sure that there were some signs, there were some acting out, maybe some really big spotlights that you were facing on yourself, you know, to make you take that trip to India to try to reconnect with yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how a stylist might act when he or she is stressed out?
Sure. I mean, there are so many ways. I mean, gosh, we just need to watch our coworkers sometimes. But, you know, I think some of the behaviors are like they're angry all the time, or they're lashing out. Like maybe we work with somebody that just is so defensive and they're hard to connect with. They blame others usually for their woes and for what's not going well. Sometimes they abuse alcohol. Sometimes that's something that's really, in the drugs in this industry has been really large because we're artisans really. And, it's so connected with this, like we can be careless, and it's very hard to stay centered and grounded in this profession that's so powerfully artistic and demands so much of us, really. I think that feeling of being short with coworkers as well, short with clients, if you are not booked, that is a sure sign of something happening. So, and sometimes it's overeating. Sometimes it's just like having coffee all day and sugar and wondering why we feel bad at the end of the day. So those are some of the things. There's a lot, I'm sure, I'm not even capturing, but sometimes I think hairdressers have this arms folded attitude and like, what do you have to prove to me? Or, they're know-it-alls. So they can't let in a little bit of light and a little bit of breathing room for themselves. So there's somebody that's usually giving way too much or not enough, and usually don't have a very clear head about them.
Well, I know these kind of things are definitely going to impact a stylist work. So if you're a master stylist and have stylists working under you, or even just a employee looking at other stylists, how do you think or what signs would you see that stress is impacting somebody's work? How might they act out, or how might they interact with other people?
Yeah, I think there's various ways that it can impact our work. I mean, from I think sometimes stylists can think that this is like their own private stage, so they get to just act out in different ways, and they do. And it's like their own, and their client is captive. Like they can't move, they're captive. They've got scissors and wet hair, and they can't just say, this is way too much, I'm going to walk out the door. But they take it, and maybe you don't see them again. So I think that they can lose clients from not being on track with what this is really about, which is a service industry. I think that we can become more talkers rather than listeners. And, what better thing than a hairdresser that can listen, right? And they can separate themselves enough to be a good listener. What is the client saying? And remembering these things about them when they walk in again. Maybe the hairdresser starts acting snarky and, a little testy with their clients. I mean, I've been guilty of that. And I have to catch myself and remind myself, I'm here for them. It doesn't mean let them walk over you. So it's having a healthy sense of boundaries, which, that's a whole nother conversation, but there's much to do there in terms of those boundaries. I think hairdressers, how it can impact them is they also can become very defensive to feedback from the client. And really, isn't that what this is about, is serving the client? I mean, they need the room to be able to say, this really didn't work for me, and not take it personally. It's like just feedback on the haircut. It's not feedback on me, Rebecca, the stylist. So it can definitely, in fact, that being defensive and not being able to hear our clients when they have criticism or feedback about their style or what you've done. It's not personal. I think, a lot, and this is me, I'm going to raise my hand, call myself out, that we give our power away. And this is big, I think. Something really, there's a well here of exploration for stylists, and how we can either not raise our prices, we We don't feel good about our work because we're not getting paid for what we do. We start taking out on the client, but it's also in how we give our power away and not being professional and saying, this is what I think will look good on you. So it starts when we feel we don't have power, we become very weak and we become sort of caved in. And it's a terrible conundrum how to move out of that. And we start feeling disconnected from people, from reality, from our coworkers, from the salon. We become gossipers. It's a huge thing in this industry. I mean, it's kind of the bad reputation salons and stylists have that I think, sometimes it's deserved. And how do we move out of that? How do we raise the bar for ourselves? And, it takes one person at a time. It takes one hairdresser changing her MO, and it affects everybody out there in the industry. So I feel like it has to begin with us. And that's why I have started, sort of this book series on self-care. It all begins there. And when when that kind of impact is happening in our work, maybe we are making money. Maybe it is something that's bringing in a ton of money. But is that all there is, really? If we're having that sort of experience in our daily life, is that joyful? I can't imagine so. And I can't imagine somebody's bringing in a ton of money if that's their experience every day. So I think that's a huge impact on our lives. Not only the money, but how our spirit is, can be just really very small. And I'm talking about raising that up and bringing a much bigger game to the plate, into the salon.
Well, I know personally I can relate to what you're talking about with the stylist being more of a talker than a listener. The particular one I go to these days, it's kind of hard because she tells the same sad stories again and again about her derelict daughter and the daughter's derelict boyfriend, etc. And so I become depressed when I leave there. It's like, oh my God, what a horrible life. So that's a great segue into how does this being under stress impact customers? I mean, I still go there, even though it's less frequently, because she cuts my hair really, really well, probably better than anybody I've been to in a while, but I have to kind of staunch myself, to prepare for the onslaught of sad stories that I'm sure are going to happen because they have happened every time I've been there.
Yeah, I know. It's like the client has to put on a shield to go in the salon. I mean, I even have a client that she cannot bear going into a big salon because, number one, salons can be very intimidating. It's all about looking good. What if you don't look good when you go in? And there's a tremendous amount of pressure to, I don't know, it's like this world, and it can be so intimidating. And not to mention then when you've got all this drama going on in the salon between hairdressers and, I mean, oh my gosh, it can be pretty crazy. Loud music and hit people, tattoos everywhere. And what if you're not that? So I think what happens is the client can start to feel very invisible. And there's nothing worse than, I think, people talking over each other and talking as if the client aren't there. The clients are just sitting there in the chair like they're like becoming just invisible, and you can see it. They sort of shrink down and they are feeling very uncomfortable. And those clients, I can bet you will not see again in the salon because they're feeling talked over. They're feeling held captive. They feel unimportant. I mean, especially when they're getting every 2 minutes, they're getting a message that somebody at the desk needs them, or sometimes owners of the salons can be the most guilty. They're being interrupted for phone calls, delivery people, and, they feel like a number. That's the experience. I'm just a number in this cog of the wheel, and it's not feeling very comfortable. And they become unhappy, and they'll go down. There are, believe me, plenty of competition down the street, very skilled hairdressers who can deliver just equally or not better work. And somebody will settle for mediocre work just to have, to feel important, you know. So, you know, that feeling of, well, you know, what if to imagine ourselves as a client, and I can tell you, I just walked into the coffee center down the street yesterday, and, you know, we don't have to go far to see there's bad customer service and there's great customer service. And again, that's a whole nother conversation, but we have to check in with ourselves to see how our behavior is impacting our clients. It doesn't take much. We're great at perceiving what's going on with the client, what's going on with their hair. Like, we're doing all of this in minutes, but are we really stopping long enough to see how our behavior is impacting them and their experience in the salon?
Well, that's a great point that you make about customer service in particular. I had an unusual experience at the drive-thru of Dairy Queen. I don't know if there are Dairy Queens out where you are, Rebecca. They're kind of like a Texas fast food places, and I was going through there to get a salad for lunch, and I gave my order, and the woman who's taking the order says, "Oh my gosh, are you my favorite customer?" And I said, well, I don't know. Am I? She's like, well, drive around, let me see. And so, you know, she called me. She was like, oh, my gosh, you sound so much like my favorite customer. But it was kind of cool, you know, to be recognized at all places, you know, a fast food drive-thru. So you just never know the impact customer service can have on you, especially when you're in a much more one-on-one personal service field, you know, like hairdressing.
Right. Well, and there's nothing like 25 years later. I mean, I can honestly say almost 35 years into the industry. You know, just yesterday I saw one of my staunch clients that's been with me 25 years, and who knows what touched her that many years ago. You know, today it's much more difficult to hold on to a client, especially younger folks that are used to moving around, going to the new hip place. So what are we going to do differently that keeps our client in our chair? And that's what this whole conversation is about, right? It's not only feeling whole and complete and like masterful at what we do, but being masterful is being able to be masterful in the relationship and keeping our clients in the chair. And how beautiful, you know, she's got her little white hair and she still rocks a bob and she still comes to me. And that is so, that means more to me than, you know, most things. It's that she has the loyalty, sense of loyalty, and that's what we have the ability to do. But I'm not sure what impacted her 25, 30 years ago when I was a kid in the industry. But that's what we can create, is that kind of long-lasting relationship. And that's very unique.
Wow, that's almost from the cradle to the grave kind of service.
For sure. Oh, bless your heart.
Well, let's change the scope of the conversation here a little bit. We've talked a lot about stress, how to recognize stressors, the impact that it has on the stylist, the impact it has on the customer. When a stylist maybe self-recognizes that he or she's under stress or burned out or has been told this from maybe a client or an employer, what's some of the things that they should do to help work through that?
Well, you know, some of these strategies are, they really come from a personal place for me because, you know, I've had the great, you know, opportunity to have many teachers in my lifetime. I've always been sort of, if you will, on a spiritual path, but, you know, I've been very open to hearing how people, you know, get to the meaning of life. And so these strategies are things I actually do every day. Some of the things I think that help are setting up some time for ourselves to just sit with ourselves and see what the heck is going on inside. You know, to feel those feelings we want to easily push away or drown out or, you know, eat another cookie and forget about. You know, it's very easy to put our self-care on hold. And when we are giving so much during the day, it's imperative that we have time for ourselves to reflect. And whether it's sitting quietly or it's sitting with a pencil and pen or a pencil and paper and writing down our thoughts, or writing down our intention for the day, or whatever you do. Some people call them morning pages, or I just call it simply tuning in with yourself and reflect on what you're grateful for. I mean, gratitude is it's a thing we hear about, but there's something very valid about, counting those gratitudes that for our day and in our life, we have so much to be grateful for. So I think when we're muddled in our head and our experience of life, and it can be challenging, taking that moment to find what we're grateful for is very powerful, because then we start feeling instantly better about ourselves and our life and what we're going to bring to the salon that day. So I think it can be very, it's kind of like the rudder for the day. It kind of steers you where you need to be and the direction you need to flow in. It's kind of like getting in motion with life. And from all these practices I've done over my life, it's the most powerful and the simplest. So I find that that's really helpful. Even if it's twice a day, at the end of the day, sometimes I'll take that, a different book that sits by my bed, and I'll write down, I'll just consider who rubbed me the wrong way and kind of release that energy, just somehow release it, just let that go somehow. And, actually the words I say are release it to love. I recognize this is hard for me, and I'm going to just let it go. It's very powerful. And to go to sleep, with that kind of cleansed heart, if you will, it really helps. And then in my intentions for the next day, what I liked about my day, just thinking about that. What did I like? What went well? So you can see there's more of this input of positivity that's very, very powerful. And it starts to erase the negativity. Because I'm telling you that negativity takes so much more energy than this more positive, good stuff. It's much easier to hold on to. I think those areas, listing those areas that we feel stuck, this is something I'm genuinely stuck about. And I think just writing it down and start writing down some changes that we can make. That too is so helpful. Just to call attention to it, and writing things down is so it helps get it out of our heads and our hearts. And, I think just breathing into it, simply taking a breath sometimes and walking out the door from the salon at lunch break, easy things that we forget to do. We're on the phone and texting, and, hairdressers are notorious for being great multitaskers. We're eating lunch within 5 minutes. We're shoving it down with, a Coca-Cola, and we're texting, and we're checking Facebook, and we're putting a latest post up. And, if we can get out of the salon for a moment and breathe the fresh air and take a walk and put down the phone, that too can be such a great re-energizer for the day. I mean, go sleep in the car for a minute. I don't know, for different things, for different folks, but it's finding those ways that can help us feel re-energized in our day can be so helpful. I mean, I could go on and on, and I do offer more on that hairdresserselfcare.com. People will be able to find more strategies there.
Well, you've given us some great tips for stylists to partake in self-care and a little bit about what self-care is all about. If you had to pick maybe your top 3 best ways for a stylist to take care of himself, herself, what would that be?
I think that's a tough one, picking 3, but I think first asking the question is, am I happy? Am I happy where I'm at? Am I happy not just only in my career choice, but am I happy in my career, in my life, in my environment? I think that's a powerful place to start. And from there we can say, all right, there's a meltdown here, or there's a breakdown. So what can I do about it? And finding that, to me, is like the most respectful thing we can do for ourselves, is to just tune in and ask, am I truly happy? And from there, it's like dreaming big, right? It's having a vision for our life and having a vision for our career. Many of us have stopped dreaming, and don't even have one. What is that? So we can start really, where do we want to be in our career in 5 years, 10 years? And I think that's a beautiful exercise that I never stop doing, truthfully. I think that it's giving ourselves room to really create in our lives, whatever it is. And that can't help but bring a smile to our face and to our client's face, and, help us feel more like, wow, I have a right to be here, and I have a right to be happy and to have a life worth living. And, I think it's super powerful. I think that creating is it's our lifeline as artists, as creators. Our creativity can be so shut down from these, from the heaviness of life. So how do we reconnect with that creativity? And I think just giving voice to that, writing it down, dreaming, painting it, color it, give voice to it, can't help but start to foster some light in life and ourselves again. And, therein we might find laughter, the most powerful medicine of all.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I can think of one guy, within our L'Oreal family, I just recognize his laugh and it brings a smile to my face, and it reminds me it's the most contagious medicine, right? It makes us feel so good. I mean, of course, there's lots of other things we can do, but I think those are some of the ways that we can get started.
Well, if a stylist recognizes that he or she is on the road to burnout or is stressed out, what are 3 things you would recommend for them to do as a preventative measure? Well,
I think some of those preventative measures are some that I've mentioned, but I think, having a life outside the salon is so powerful. We forget, like when we're on the track of being really great at what we do and being the best and trying to be really good at what we do. I think master hairstylists have really got this figured out. They go take a walk on the beach. They put the career aside, and they foster these other areas of our life, our family, the people we love, spending time with them, having hobbies outside of our career, and having these healthy routines in our lives to support us. Like I said, we give so much. We've got to find a way to give to ourselves. And hopefully some of these will resonate with hairstylists. And I think they will be able to really connect with, oh yeah, I need to get better at this. It's going to serve my career. And, like I said, standing on the other side of 30 years in this career, I can say honestly that these strategies, these techniques help me bring my whole self to what I do. So I'm not just limping along, but I have chosen the career of I would choose no other. So I think those are some of the ways that people can reduce the burnout and stress and stay thriving in the career for many years to come.
Well, Rebecca, I know one of the things you do as a coach to hairstylists is that you help them create stress reduction, stress burnout plans. When you do that with clients, what changes happen in the people that you work with and the stylists that you work with?
I think, stylists start to connect with their dream again. And if nothing else, when I'm out there speaking and working with hairdressers, it's reconnecting them with the light that had them start this career in the first place, to reignite the passion, why they got into it. You know, reconnecting with the passion for what we do is not only technique, it's not only about a great haircut, and it's not only about $1 million. You know, it's about, do I feel whole in what I'm doing? So I help them connect with their dream, and I help them find the respect for what they do. And, you know, when one person changes, everything around them can change. We can still affect our environment. So we can, yes, say it's the salon that's bad, but no. Let's stop for a minute. Let's really connect with ourselves again. And I think it helps them just be more responsible. And so I do think people start connecting with that again. Like, why am I here? That's right. I got into this because I love styling and I love helping people. And they start connecting with a bigger dream. Like, what's next? What do I get to create? Oh, goody. It's like running up to the salon door and saying, oh yeah, this is my life and I love it. So I think, you know, if nothing else, it's helping people, helping stylists reconnect with their love for what they do. And connecting to the creativity. I mean, that's also what it's about, is, being a better hair cutter, but finding their own voice in what they do, finding their own taste of hair color, finding their own, like, their signature styles, and having clients come back to them because they're uniquely them. So it's finding their unique gifts in what they do, because we all bring something so different and so beautiful. So I think they really begin to flourish.
Well, Rebecca, I learned a lot today about the secret life of hairstylists, things that I didn't know were going on with them. And assuming we have some hairstylists here that are listening to this episode, how can they find out more about you and your products and services?
Well, one of the ways is, number one, I do have the more strategies available to people. If they visit hairdresserselfcare.com, they can download instantly more strategies, and they're really fun, and you can keep by your bedside and remember. And, you know, RebeccaBeardsley.com also has some other things there for them. But if they visit the hairdresserselfcare.com, they can download instantly more strategies that'll help them out and help them get started. So that's a great way to get in touch with me. And I look forward to it. I look forward to serving more hairdressers and changing our industry.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.